Definitely, appreciate the value of this work, absolutely. And, my involvement is definitely trying to figure out, as we move forward with this, how to do this in a globalized, standardized way so that it makes it easy for each market to just implement in their market. And so, I know you and I, Adrian, and Julie and I have spoken about this in the past, some of those challenges with that automation can be very market specific. So I'm really looking forward to understanding more about your guys' approach to that.
Absolutely. And I think, some of those other enabling capabilities like doc upload and things like that, we want to be sure are part of the conversation, because you're right, there's an inconsistent application of just even, that. And I'll say as a capability, because I know it isn't the same market by market or even process by process, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Matt, you want to go ahead to the next slide? So just a little bit of background for us. And Penelope, you, like you said, you've had the opportunity to be exposed to us a little bit over the years. But EY actually came in 2018 and did this assessment for us. It was before our team was formed. You may have had an opportunity to talk to them at the time, and they really tried to understand, let's document all the opportunities, whatever they may be, to really, I think, make the case for the fact that there's potentially an opportunity to try to consolidate what we're doing, at least work together as much as we possibly can. And that effort in 2018 led to the formation of our team the following year. And we've really, I think, been successful at forming what I'll call a community of automators. So what we've done is we've gathered those existing business units that have an established center of excellence or even an informal automation approach, and really brought them together to talk about intelligent automation, get aligned on what the definitions are, share best practices, really educate teams on intelligent automation and what's possible. But most importantly, we did identify an executive leader within each of the business units to be a member of our steering committee. And so for the past year, we've had quarterly steering committee meetings to really, I think, help bring awareness of what we're doing within enterprise automation, and how the business units themselves are driving our demand and what we're working on, and how they're ultimately benefiting. And I'll use an example. One of the opportunities that came up in 2018 and that we continued to hear about as we were formulating the community was the need for language translation, and the fact that a lot of teams were building back office teams. We're not even talking front office at this point. Back office teams in specific locations, for their language skills. And so we did some research. We brought the community together, and we looked at a number of different tools that provided automated language translation capabilities. And so I think it's a great example of how we don't make decisions in a silo or in a vacuum. We truly do bring, again, what we call the community together to try to make sure, as we're looking at capabilities, we're taking individual business needs into consideration and into account, and then try to make sure that we're bringing on capabilities or building capabilities that are usable across the enterprise. And now we're 2021, and so hopefully we'll be able to leverage these capabilities. We'll be able to take the information that we're getting to really formulate the list or the inventory, so to speak, of what's out there. A lot of it we know, but a lot of it we really just wanted to make sure was documented, because there's a lot of, I'll call them up and coming capabilities that are offered by third parties. And so this activity is really meant to give us what I love the term Julie uses, the little blue check mark, right? That Amex verifies these capabilities, and I think we can all feel secure that, they're offering what they should. And I think it'll just give us a chance to really level set what everyone is promising. And hopefully that'll be helpful for everyone going forward. Okay, Matt, you want to go to the next slide?
So thanks again, Penelope, for joining. I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about the enterprise automation swim lane of this overall program, and then we can sort of talk about what we've done so far and what we're looking at. So the enterprise automation piece, we're really looking for automation and process optimization opportunities across the enterprise. So we've been talking to all the different business units. We've I think today's our last day for this initial discovery phase, and then we'll have talked to each of the main functions within the press. And the idea here is do an overall canvas and to identify focus areas that we can then dig into a little bit more deeply and try to identify process optimization opportunities, automation opportunities that will eventually have impact to revenue, operating expense, and then I think I heard the point on the call earlier also, customer experience, reduce risk, enhance compliance, etc. Right? So I think that in general, we're in this discovery phase right now where we're doing that broad scan and broad canvassing, and then as we dig in deeper and identify the focus areas, that's where the opportunities really start to present themselves, and we'll have specific examples of areas. Just a little bit more about the program. So again, I said we are doing it centrally and looking across the enterprise, and the idea of that is to not only identify things that have one business or one market, but really be able to apply across a number of different markets or businesses or products, and leverage those sort of synergistic capabilities across the businesses. Other thing I think Adrian already mentioned, but the leadership support is there. So we've identified, I think about a year ago now, that executive steerco was set up. We have broad support from across the enterprise with champions in each area. So that helps to kind of remove the roadblocks that you may see with a program like this. And then the last piece is that there's funding available to drive some of these identified opportunities forward that are going to require investment. Any questions on that, Penelope?
No, that makes sense. Thanks.
Can we have Robin too as well? And I really should apologize. Would it be okay if we go back and do just a quick Penelope and Robin, just a quick introduction? I'm so sorry.
Not at all. I think that makes sense because on our side, on Robin and our side, roles and responsibilities have changed due to recent org changes. So I think it makes a lot of sense. So I have a new role different from probably what Adrian and Julie and I have spoken about in the past. So I lead the acquisition, product, and services strategy team. We are responsible for acquisition platform strategy and ensuring that the product teams supporting the business and markets have the tools that they need to deliver value quickly, efficiently, and with high quality. My team is basically the platform teams, and we have platform product management teams for both GoTo and eApply on my team. Robin, do you want to go?
Yep. Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Robin Kelly. And so I lead Enterprise International for acquisition and onboarding experience. So that covers, so basically anybody that's new feature work. So where Penelope is looking to scale the platform for global use, as she discussed, my team is really responsible as we need to launch new features across the 18 international markets, and we support international consumer as well as international SBS. in the simplest terms, when somebody applies for a credit card, my team supports the application experience as well as the onboarding, which is known as Go-To, or GNA is our legacy system.
And so just to kind of put it a little bit in context of this conversation, Robin and I would work closely together to understand where these kinds of tools are needed in the journeys that she supports, what's the priority of those tools for those markets and stakeholders, and then my team would build globalized components that her team could then leverage, hopefully very easily, for each market. That would be the goal, pretty much.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thanks, Penelope and Robin. So I think that's sort of interesting because we've talked to, I'm sure some of your colleagues already. We've talked to GCSG yesterday. So you're essentially an enabling unit for them to execute properly, right? For the marketing teams, for the acquisition teams to execute. Is that right? GSG as well.
Right. We provide the technology that supports the application journey.
Got it. All right. Mike, can we go to the next page? So again, I'll go through this quickly. Really, the program that we're running here is broken up into a few phases. So right now we're in this kickoff discovery phase. We've been doing this for the last couple of weeks, where we're really just doing that high-level scan across all the areas, looking to identify focus areas. We've identified a few that we want to look into a little more deeply so far. Examples, just general servicing. We want to look at the onboarding process, and again, not only for revenue opportunities or for operating opportunities, cost improvement opportunities, but also we want to take that lens to the regulatory space. We've heard a number of areas. I think it was France or another country in Europe where there were new acquisitions was experiencing an issue. So we wanted to obviously kind of look into that as well. And it sounds like, based on what I'm hearing from Robin, that area and those platforms would obviously help to enhance those experiences.
It's a good call out, Matt. And I I joke, right? If you say France to this group, everybody gets a bit of a twitch, right? But we know that there's lots of regulatory scrutiny happening and lots of attention, particularly in EMEA, but really around the world that we need to address. And that is absolutely taking priority. And I will say, Robin and Penelope, our own team is involved in that as well. I think you're aware we own the platform. It used to be called Studio A. It's now A Studio once we were merged under enterprise architecture. So a lot of the automation capabilities we have around intelligent document handling are being leveraged in France to help understand the millions of French documents that exist out there. Just understand what we have, right? Because it's a simple question that we can't answer for our regulators. So we're using automation to read and understand those documents. And I think what's important about that is we're learning a lot, right? And when I say learning, it's not just our own learning from a requirements perspective because these documents are crazy, but we're leveraging that knowledge for the machine learning. And that way we've learned it once, documented it as part of the machine learning process, and hopefully it is something that we can leverage for the future of onboarding as well as a result.
Yeah. Thanks, Adrian. And then just kind of finishing up this page. So once we complete this first phase, we'll identify some focus areas. We're scoring the different business units on a number of dimensions. So change readiness, process maturity, opportunity size. And then once we identify our sort of short list of BUs to look at, we'll dive into those diligence sessions and look at specific focus areas or processes within those BUs and across those BUs where we want to identify either opportunities for strategic automation or process optimization and engineering. And then as we come out of that deep dive, we'll circle back with everybody, align on the sizing for savings impact, make sure everyone's on the same page there, and then we'll lay out a plan for how those will be implemented over the next 18 to 20 months. I think that timeline is obviously important because not only are we looking for opportunities, but we want things that are going to be not quick fixes, but at the same time can be strategic in nature, but also possible be. Can you go to the next page? So, Penelope and Robin, I think this conversation might be a little bit different than some of the other ones that we're having because in the other meetings we've been talking to business units directly. From your perspective, it sounds like you obviously own the platform that enables some of these processes. So I'm really interested in that because we want to make sure that we're lining up and as we do deep dives and identify focus areas, that we're aligned with maybe some of the things that you're working on. We don't want to be kind of looking or digging down an area that's already being fixed by the platform, for example. So maybe we could just start out with just a quick sort of overview of what your strategic priorities are for the acquisition and onboarding process, and then we can kind of go from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I mean, so our strategic priority for application and onboarding, like at the highest level, is to improve the experience and improve what I'll call the submit rate. So, like, there's two parts. How do you get folks through the journey to complete and submit their application? And then what processes and procedures do we have to reduce pens, right? Like, we know a lot of applications pen for many reasons. And as we modernize our platforms and our systems, how do we work, with our risk colleagues and whatnot to get the best customer experience ultimately to drive new accounts? That's at the highest level. But what I can tell you in this space right now, specifically in international, our strategic priority is to get compliant. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of, I think we have a backlog of like 30 initiatives that are regulatory, so mandated to be compliant in the space. So we're really only focused on right now is updating, and it's all around digital identity and verification. So how do you prove you are who you say you are? And, Adrian joked about France, but, a lot of the work, that we've been doing in the last 6 months has been to update the application and onboarding experience by adding fields, right? So there's a lot of regulation that's come out of specifically Europe, but it's not specific to Europe because we've seen this in Australia and other markets around collecting and validating information from the customer. So we're really focused on doing that in, I would say, a streamlined way. Like we do have challenges in that, each market wants to onboard different vendors for digital identity and verification. So that's why I was interested when I spoke with Adrian about the work stream. Number one is just the vendors, but that's really the strategic priorities from my standpoint over the next 18 months is we've got to get up to par with what regulators are demanding in the space. And it's a quite complicated space that we're in just because we have the volume of regulatory demands that have come in really outpace our ability to deliver with our current team and our current funding, right? So that's just the challenge that we're faced with. And then I can let Penelope talk about her priorities for her team because it's her remit is a bit different because she alluded to this in the beginning, but it's to really build and scale for the future of the platform based on the needs.
Right. So my remit, like Robin said, is more focused on ensuring our platform is globalized in nature. So yes, we absolutely support Robin and her teams, but we also support all the other markets and all the other teams with building out globalized components, ensuring that the platform is available, responsive, speedy in its responses, as well as looking for opportunities. Like one of our main initiatives that we're focusing on this year will be looking for opportunities to streamline work that Scrum teams do today to make it more configuration, with the goal of eventually having that not be a Scrum team activity at all, but something that another team could configure or update. So we're looking for those kinds of opportunities to help our platform scale. And then I would say that, like I said earlier, we're also working very closely with Robin's teams, but the U.S. teams, the banking teams, non-card teams, to understand their roadmaps and build capabilities that support their roadmaps. So that's kind of our strategic objectives. Does that make sense? Are there any questions?
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I want to dig into a couple of those things a little bit more to understand. So when you're looking at sort of your roadmap for the platform, Penelope, in general, are there areas, like I realize that it's a broad remit, are there areas that have been explicitly identified where you're looking to streamline maybe something that's happening manually in the conception process right now? You're looking to streamline those specific activities that are being done, right now by people and operations teams, and you're sort of those automated in the system, or at least back in the system.
Sure. So, excuse me. When I speak about sort of streamlining activities, it's more things like, for example, enabling somebody other than a developer in a Scrum team to update the text on a page in an application, like taking that text out of the code and enabling perhaps a marketing person in the market to update the text in their application. So looking for those kinds of opportunities. Another thing that the team recently built was a way to just allow a product manager to configure a new product. So we have a new product launch coming. The product manager can just configure it, and it doesn't actually require a developer to do it. So those are the kinds of things that we've been looking to streamline. The only thing I would say on the operations side that is very early days that I've been discussing with Arlene, and it also is being driven by some of the findings from our audit last year, is there something more that we should be doing to ensure that CCPs are using our application in a compliant way, and they are not deviating from standard processes and moving forward applications in a way that is not compliant or violating our policies and procedures. So that is something that we're looking at.
Got it. And then just to clarify, is this app, so the platform that you own and the applications that it houses, are any of them directly customer facing, or is it more the back end that once the customer submits the application, via the website or the application, the mobile app or whatever it is, that then this platform is where the back end is happening and the application is being processed, et cetera?
So eApply is definitely customer facing or
Yep.
prospect facing. And so that is one of the platforms
Okay.
in my remit. And
Okay.
then GoTo, which is CCP facing and largely back end, is also in my remit.
Got it. That's super helpful.
And that's also true for Robin. So when she's focusing on delivering for markets, she's got both eApply and GoTo and GNA and Swap and Lannis and all those fun things.
Yeah.
Got it. and just to kind of play back one thing to you, so it sounds like a lot of the changes that you're making, a lot of the updates, are really focused on enabling the people that run or manage products or campaigns to be able to do a sort of self-service there, as opposed to having to rely on technology team developers, right? Just a quick question on that. The developers that would do that, where exactly do they sit? Is that in technology, or are those people? Is there a specific team for that within the servicing group that does that, or does that happen, right? Or is it actually in the business?
So our teams, product management teams, work with our technology colleagues in the tech organization to build and deliver. So product management decides what to build and when to build it based on priorities, and technology decides on the how to build it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I just wasn't sure exactly where, how the operating model looked right now.
Sure.
Okay, and then Robin, I actually wanted to go back to one thing that you were saying around the regulatory piece. So a lot of those pieces right now, obviously, we talked about France. There's another one. Is right now the fixes to those that are being implemented, are they sort of technological and automation related, or are they more policy changes in terms of us collecting the data up front? I just want to understand a little bit more about that.
It's a variety of both, to be honest. So some of them is collecting more data up front, but in doing so, like for France, because everybody, like we have to validate income, and there's a manual way we're doing it, and we've been asked to automate it. So as we're going through these regulations, what we're finding is it does put a tremendous demand on like our servicing colleagues. So we are looking for ways to automate processes, right? So France income verification, rather than somebody like look at like your France tax statement and validate what you inputted on the application actually matches your tax statement. We're looking for ways through a vendor on automation of that, right? Because you upload a tax statement. So that's like a great example. I guess you upload a tax statement, the vendor can send us, scan that tax statement, and then we can kind of validate, does that match what they've inputted on their on the form. So we want to automate a lot of these processes. I mean, some are just straightforward, but to your point, like we do look for automation versus manual processes.
Got it.
So Robin,
Also the unique thing, just to layer on to the example that Robin was giving in France, the unique thing about France though is that it's a part of the regulation that a third party has to validate those documents. So that's not something, based on my understanding of the regulations, that we could bring in-house.
so that's an interesting question, right? And Robin, I think you had alluded to wanting to learn more about Penelope too, wanting to learn more about that first work stream about vendors, right? How, and we've experienced this even outside of kind of the acquisition and onboarding process, but how are you trying to kind of take control of the vendor decisions that are being made by the individual markets? If your intention is to build globalized components, it's a little bit difficult when, I would assume it's a little bit difficult when individual markets are making decisions about engaging with vendors to do some of this work. Are you working on that? How are you approaching that?
I'm chuckling just because it is a challenge. I mean, to be very transparent, sometimes the markets just go behind our back and they just go off, and we're looped in very last minute, and we're told we just signed a vendor relationship and we're going to do this in the journey, and that happens quite frequently, and it's very problematic.
And I mean, when does it not happen, Robin?
Yeah. I guess that's what's happening right now is they don't want to wait for us nor engage us, so they are running off. And to be honest, it's really like they have the resources. Like Penelope and I have, contained resources and contained capacity, and I have a backlog of 20 things. So I'm working on France, and the next market, where it's an interesting conundrum because then the markets have folks that sit in acquisition, and they have the bandwidth, I think, to actually go off and do this because each we support 18 markets, right? And then the markets are impatient and don't want to wait for us, and they see an opportunity, and they start that conversation, and they sign that engagement, and they kind of just come to us and say, we want to work with this vendor. It's a problem because I think that, and we've seen this, so like two examples are last year, the market in the Netherlands found this vendor Signicat to do identity verification. So, and what we saw was it was quite challenging. And the contract was signed like 2+ years ago. But when our team actually started working with Signicat, as you can imagine, just the integrations with the vendors, and we just had a lot of challenges, and the project was delayed by several months because of, they always sell you an out-of-the-box solution, but it never works as expected. And if you multiply that by us having to do these integrations with vendor by vendor, you can see like it's just not a great model. So we are, that's why I'm interested in that third party spend. I think we are interested in like, how do we have preferred vendors that can solve majority of the market needs, right? Like, how do we move away from that? So we have active conversations on that as we speak around like we need a strategic way because I don't think markets quite understand the technical aspects when you have to integrate with third parties and everything that comes with it. So if you had just, if Signicat was a global solution that was easily pluggable and scalable into multiple markets, that would be great. But it's a very specific solution for the specific market request. So it's been quite challenging for us, to be honest.
Yeah, they're really good at selling the product, but when it comes time to actually use it, we've definitely experienced that. It seems like some of the markets
don't actually care. The other challenge we have is like, while we're a global team, the markets don't actually care about a global solution, to be honest, right? Like they don't. Like, what's in it for them? Like, why? So that's the other challenge. We are an enterprise team, and when you work with non-enterprise teams, they just don't have that mindset, right? Like they could care less if we say this global solution would solve like X% of your use cases. We should have global solutions. They don't really care, to be honest. So there's a lot of work to do in this space. Because I actually think a global solution and like preferred vendors could actually really help us get like the identity and verification. Like in France, the vendor is QuickSign. They're up and running. They're live. To Penelope's point, the regulation was very specific in France. We already had the relationship, but we even just see the same trouble in France is the vendor integration, the back and the forth. They can't support some critical processes.
Just to layer on to what Robin was saying, two other challenges that we face with the current model. One is the markets don't vet these vendors from a technology standpoint. That happens later, and that's really inefficient. And there's been situations where we get, months into solution with a vendor where we realize we can't work with them and they have to go find a different vendor. And then the second challenge is the way with this construct of the market engaging the vendor sees the market as their client, and they have to support their client, and our teams are kind of ancillary. Like, we have to go through the market to get access to the vendor, and it creates a challenge for even trying to create a globalized solution, as well as just even getting our questions and needs met in a timely fashion.
I can imagine that's frustrating. And your point, Penelope, about not doing proper due diligence, right? We end up in a scenario where we have it's a good thing if they get, I guess it's not a good thing, but it's much better if we identify this before they're onboarded versus after we've been doing business with them. We've had some experience, I would say, in the Australia market, right, where we now have to offboard certain vendors because they don't meet our InfoSec standards, which is a bare minimum to even probably be having conversations with a vendor or even considering them, right? So that's helpful. I think that we're approaching this vendor situation because, again, as I said, it's not just onboarding and acquisition that experiences it, right? It's for a lot of different processes this happens. The very narrowed market focus and decision, approaching it from a GSM standards process perspective, right? What is the role of GSM to help stop the bifurcation of all of these vendors? What's our role? How do we make sure that these organizations have the tools that they need so they're not having to go to a vendor if they don't have to?
Right.
And then again, trying to have those approved checkmark kind of capabilities at the ready.
Curious, would this include vendors like bureaus or other vendors that provide KYC, KYB?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's any vendor
Okay.
that's doing a process or that we're paying.
That's another significant challenge that we're having because we need third-party vendors to adhere to specific SLAs, and we're having trouble getting that to happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So is that is it a critical function that they're doing for us? I'm not familiar with the two that you mentioned.
Credit bureaus.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've had a number of outages recently due to credit bureaus either being down. Sometimes we find out late that they're doing maintenance, and it causes an outage on our side or downtime on our side. So, it's a big challenge, and it's impacting our ability to meet our SLAs for our partners.
Right.
Is this?
Yeah, Matt, if we could write that down as a challenge.
Yeah. I was going to say, is this also in market or is this in U.S.?
I'm trying to think back. I think right now it's mostly a challenge in the U.S. However, I'm saying that because I don't think we've really dug in and done analysis on the other markets. So it might be.
What was the name of
larger than the
it?
US.
You said Zero and the other one?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The name of the provider is Zero?
No. I haven't named any of the providers. But thinking back about recent outages, I think they're all U.S. Journey-specific vendors. But that said, I haven't seen any analysis about the vendors that we rely on for international markets to see if that is also a challenge.
Yeah. Which then is complicated by the fact that you're not viewed as maybe the client. So it's hard for you to hold them accountable.
Yep, absolutely.
I think just going off of that point, I wanted to make sure that we spend at least a little bit of the time. I realize the regulatory issues are pressing, and that's why I think, based on what you said, Penelope and Robin, a lot of the effort is going toward those because they need to be closed out. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about, if you look past the regulatory issues and maybe into some of the areas that we're not able to focus on 100% right now because we have to solve these regulatory problems. What would be some of your main focus areas in that case, right? So are there areas that are there and we know of in the acquisition or in the onboarding space that may have a big impact to revenue or areas that are expensive for us to run right now, but because of the regulatory pieces, we're not able to help focus on 100%.
I would say that there's a lot of growth opportunities from like a strategic way, and a lot of folks talk around like pre-filling our application and how do we have, for lack of a better term, like a smart application. But I think it's really improving our processes. Like I said in the beginning, like our strategic priorities are to, I think we can really we're on a lot of legacy systems that have legacy processes as far as, and even the front end from like an e-apply, like the experience is not great. So I would say if we didn't have to do the regulatory work, we would be plowing through modernizing both our front end and our back end to make it a much smoother, efficient, from a front end, from a customer journey, even like, the mobile experience. We have tons of traffic applying through, not mobile app, but like mobile web. Like we really need to uplift and modernize our experiences to be best in class. And I think that we would be doing much more of those work. And then also, we have a market migration roadmap, but we're on a legacy system, GNA, which actually inhibits sometimes some of this growth work. So I think we'd be plowing through to modernize our systems to actually achieve that goal of having a best-in-class competitive experience, right? Because a lot of the reg work today we're doing on legacy systems, which we don't want to do. We just don't have a choice. And I would say like some of the experiences haven't been touched in 10 plus years. They're quite dated. So that's what we'd be working on. And part of that would be, process automation. Like how do you make it a better experience? Like when you need further documents from a customer, like I talk about, and I know we announced a partnership with Tink, but like in Journey, how can you make it a seamless experience where, are there open banking platforms or whatnot? So, some of our experiences are quite antiquated in that, like, you need to go and find all this documentation and upload it and wait for decisions. So we'd really be modernizing the space.
Yep.
Is there still, Robin, a POA where GNA is being sunsetted?
Yep. We're working on that market by market. But yeah, the POA is to get all the markets to go to.
Okay.
But I would say that certainly the regulatory challenges are shaping that roadmap right now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because we just, to Penelope's point, like if we didn't have, the regulatory challenges are shaping the roadmap. So if we didn't have that, we'd be wanting to get more markets onto GoTo faster, because there's inherent challenges with GNA being a mainframe system and just being really antiquated. So we want to get off sooner than later. But our roadmap is sometimes handcuffed. Our roadmap is handcuffed, not sometimes, is handcuffed right now by regulatory work that we must do.
And here's a question for you. I think, tell me if I'm wrong here, but just throwing more resources at this isn't going to help, right? What could help, right? Are there any of those?
Some resources would help. I'm not opposed to throwing more resources at it.
Okay.
I think more resources would help both. I mean, I had a call last night, but yes, more resources would help in the regulatory space, because I have limited tech teams, limited tech capacity, and limited product folks where if we literally have a backlog of 30 items and X% need to be delivered in the next 12 months. With the people that we have today, we can't do it. Because the markets are not on a global code base, it's even more challenging. So like you could have a Scrum team and a product owner right now, the way that the code base is structured, doing market by market, right? Like, because to get us compliant. So more resources would certainly help. Just get us compliant, and then we can move on to the growth, right? And I'll be honest, we're told that's not an option.
More resources are not an option.
Yeah,
Yeah,
regulatory space. I mean, I've asked my boss for more resources. I think she keeps telling me no.
That's what all our bosses are saying, right?
I know. Which I get. So then we just
I think-
prioritize, and we just have to prioritize the work. And there's literally a senior leadership meeting this morning at 9 a.m. that they're all in. And yesterday I spent hours saying, with the current resources I have, this is how far I can get down to the regulatory work, and I can't touch these other things for the next 12 months. Right? Like
Yeah.
we're not really. So that's an ongoing conversation.
So
Right. I would
as
also-
Adrian mentioned
I
at
would
the
also
beginning,
just add, I just want to layer onto that just a little bit, which is because of the current approach to the regulatory work, where it's kind of like we're just triaging and trying to power through it. If we could kind of take a step back, and if we had the resources to really look at, like, okay, how could we build globalized components for some of these things? Some of the challenge that we experience is that the markets, like Robin has pointed out, aren't particularly interested in getting a globalized component. They don't really appreciate the value of that. And so gathering requirements to simply understand what is needed is extremely challenging.
yeah. So what I think is unique, and Adrian kind of pointed this out, what's unique about the opportunity or the work that we're doing right now is that we are looking at it from two different perspectives. We have an engagement that's looking at the tools and capabilities themselves, and figuring out, what are those blue check tools? Where are the gaps? What do we have available today? And then we have this team that's looking at where's the opportunity, and the intention is to bring those two together, as Adrian said, to come up with a roadmap for the next 12 to 18 months, with the understanding that this is an initiative that Steve is really keen to help push forward and accelerate. So there may be that investment opportunity. So if we can identify this is where we need to make an investment, and if we make this investment, here's the substantial value that we could drive. And so that's what this EY team is looking to help figure out, right? What's that opportunity, and what do we need? Do we need change management in the markets, right? Do we need top-down support to make sure that we get those requirements? Do we need top-down support to stop onboarding vendors for solutions that we may already have in the toolkit? Or if it's not in the toolkit, make an investment to build it, or to help support your team so that you can continue to focus on growth, but also meet your compliance obligations.
Hey, Julie, quick question.
I think this is
like, these questions are great, like, especially like, what are the most expensive processes you own, and that sort of thing. Are you going to individual markets and getting answers to these questions?
We are going to individual business units, right? So we're working at the so these kickoff meetings have included, particularly with the business units, the senior leaders of those.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we've talked to ICS. So from that perspective, yes, we've talked to the U.S. market. So we've gotten some color on that. I think as we dig into the next layer of the meeting, because like I was saying, those diligence sessions where we fielding on the back few layers, that's when I think we'll really start to see the market specific opportunities potentially, and how those could also cut across, and we can get some efficiency across markets.
Okay, that's great.
Are you seeing?
I'm asking that question specifically because in my conversations with the markets, I've seen them in a desire to have control on their application journey, they opt to do more things manual, and they value control over automation. So I'm very, very curious. I would love to see this analyzed from a data perspective. So like the data of the cost of doing these manual processes, like really looking forward to seeing what you find there.
Yeah, and those decisions, Penelope, are we seeing, and Robin, are we seeing those decisions being made by the line of business? So is this commercial? Is this consumer making these decisions, or is it the operating teams that it's kind of being, that manual work's being tossed over the fence to them, and they have to figure out a way to do it, so they opt for a vendor? Where are these decisions predominantly coming from?
I mean, it's a mixed bag,
No.
I think. I think it's a mixed bag because I think in some markets, like there's no room to have, we have to get compliant, and if that requires manual processes because that's the easiest, quickest way to build, that's what we're doing. So it's a mixed bag there. Like, I don't necessarily think we always want to do the manual work, but the time and the effort to automate, it just takes time, right? So I think it's like the manual work it isn't the POA. That's just there is a stopgap solution to make sure that we're compliant. And then they go and they want to research automation.
Yeah, but we all know sometimes those end up being legacy processes that never go away.
Yeah.
And we have more OpEx than we have time sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. So I know we're at time. Maybe just a couple of quick next steps. So thank you so much, Penelope and Robin. This was very enlightening and very helpful. I think that really the next step for us is, like I said, we'll be making a decision about which business units we're going to move forward with. But obviously, I think there's no doubt that GCSG is an international market in scope. So we'll definitely be kind of circling back with you, and we'll keep you aware of anything we're looking at in the acquisition and supporting space, and look forward to talking with you more about this over the next few weeks.
Great. Thank you.
Definitely appreciate it. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Team.
Bye-bye.
Here. Bye.